Today is Tuesday, July 16th. The All-Star break is here. The Mets are a playoff team, and we have our first half award show to go through. Let's discuss it all, baby.
Shay Station, Jerry and Charlie. Shay Station, Jerry and Charlie, riding through the airwaves, bringing you the heat. Come on, pull up my fans, now get up out your seat. They're bringing you all things Mets. They're bringing you all things Mets. They're bringing you all things Mets. Now you're listening to Shay Station.
Oh, I haven't heard that song in a while. That was nice. It's been a couple weeks. We've
been doing it. Yeah, we weren't ever in studio, so we didn't have Jack on the ones and twos.
Yes,
So
Jack is back. Shout out.
shout out.
We've had an eventful couple weeks. Jerry was in the booth in Pittsburgh, which is always really cool. I was in a different continent for the first time in my life, which was also super fun. Italy is hot, kind of puts New York heat to shame. And while I was gone, the Mets kept winning. They are 3 games over 500. They are the third wildcard team at the end of the first half. They went 5-1 on their homestand. They finished the half strong. And there's a lot of things to discuss about this team, most of them positive, which is always cool to see. There was a trade that happened. Phil Maton is a new New York Met. Jerry, I don't even know where to start, so I guess I'll start by just asking how you're doing, man.
I'm good, buddy. Yeah, man, a lot has happened. And like this is a vibes team.
Yeah.
We've been talking about the vibes. Vibes are immaculate.
They really
Still, they've been on a run for basically 6 weeks worth of just good baseball, man. Even with some of the shortcomings in the bullpen, even with some of the, lackluster performances, I felt like they had a chance to win every single game.
Yeah.
So I think that's the key. Their relentless pursuit. This lineup is number one, first and foremost, is this lineup. The way they've been putting at-bats together, top to bottom, top of the order, bottom of the order. It's all been impressive. The way they've been able to put pressure, different guys coming through in the clutch. Your stars step up in moments to be stars. Your surprise performances at the bottom of the order. It just feels like next man up. Like somebody's going to do something to pull out a victory. Even when they lose, it feels like they're going to win, which is what you want. So it's been awesome.
Yeah, I mean, the lineup pretty much banged in every win that they racked up. I said before the show started that all the wins kind of felt the same. They'd put up 5, 6, 7 runs. Sometimes the bullpen would cough up a little bit and they'd secure the W at the end. It's a big time vibes team, man. I mean, some of the stories that we thought might have been flashes in the pan are still going. Jose Iglesias still has an OPS around 1,000. Luis Torrens, I think, has thrown out like 9 of 12 batters. It's all these role players stepping up in massive ways. And when you have that core of the lineup where Mark Vientos is still crushing the ball, you can kind of forget that like JD Martinez didn't have a great month. Starling Marte has been on the shelf for a few weeks because it really hasn't mattered. This Mets lineup is deep. They make life hell for opposing pitchers. And most of my life, I've watched great pitching Mets teams that have struggled to score runs. This is a really nice change of pace. This is one of the best offenses in baseball. And when the pitching has come together like it has this past month, they are a scary team, man. They have 3 good starters going right now. The bullpen is finally starting to settle in a little bit, and that lineup is still cranking out runs after runs after runs. So that's how you get a really good record in the month of July going forward. It's weird to think that there's only one All-Star from the New York Mets. I've said my piece about that on social media. I'm sure there are plenty of other things to be said about it, but Pete Alonso got his home run derby shine last night. But yeah, man, just over the moon about this team. It's really fun to watch.
No, I couldn't agree more, man. You mentioned like these are stories of the first half for me. We talked about it from Jose Iglesias. How is this him?
I don't understand.
I don't know. Is this sustainable? It seems like it might be. I don't think he's a one-dotter. But I do think whatever happened, if it was the weighted bats that JD Martinez brought to him, whatever, his bat speed looks great. He's always been a good, like, decent contact guy. This might be sustainable for him. This might be like a resurgence. He might be the best version of himself at 34, which is
what a story. That's so cool.
yeah, man. Yeah, it really is. And like yesterday, I had a charity golf outing for the University of Findlay sports. So we had it, and my partner wanted to hear OMG like 3 times. He's like, let's play that one. And so like, it's a real thing, man. And so, I don't know if he's going to hit like this all the time. And I actually expect a little bit of regression.
Sure.
But I do think he still will be very impactful moving forward.
He's not going anywhere, that's for sure. And he's having the absolute time of his life. He performed OMG at the All-Star festivities yesterday. You know what's funny? So I was in Italy for the past 10 days. I had a great time, one of the best trip of my life for sure. And I stayed up decently late to keep up with the team as much as I could. When the game started at 2 a.m., there's not much I can do there. But my lovely lady, who does not pay attention to baseball the way that I do, she likes going to games, but she's not a sports fanatic. She was talking to me when I was staying up for the game. She was like, I thought they stunk this year. Like, why are you watching? And I was like, no, the past 6 weeks, they've been incredible. They're back into playoff contention. And she said, how? And I was like, I can't even begin to explain to you all the things that have happened in the past month and a half. You just got to take my word for it and believe that they're back. And like, it's just so crazy to look back on a season's worth of rallying cries and big moments and role players stepping up, all that has happened in a month and a half. It's got me really excited for the second half. Like, we have 4 days off before the Mets play again, and I'm like already itching to watch them go to Miami and take care of business. Yeah,
man. I'm with you. I feel the same way. Like, I'm looking at this lineup. To me, again, the lineup's the story. I'm looking at OPS plus, and for you guys that don't know, like 100 is league average. Anything above 100 is above league average. Anything below is like subpar. Everybody is above league average except for Jeff McNeil, Brett Beatty, obviously, who hasn't been on the team for a while. Tyrone Taylor is an 89, but I still think he's had good contributions both at the plate, but more importantly, defensively. DJ Stewart, I think and then like outside of that, it's like every other person that's on there is above, and it's blows my mind.
And like well above at that. Like Harrison Bader is the lowest one I can see. He's at 110. He's the guy you signed for defense, and he's been one of the best hitters on the team. He's got 13 stolen bases. He's like the perfect 9 hitter, and it just goes to show like.
And he's so clutch. Like anytime it's a late inning RBI situation, he's been coming through. Like that's, if you're going to be around league average and then above, when you come through matters, and he's been so clutch.
Yeah. And like the story won't ever be about, like him solely or anything like that. But we posted yesterday a ballot for our listeners to fill out. We got 250 responses.
Oh, nice.
Which is pretty sweet, man. Like, thank you
guys
for filling that out. Thank you. So it makes this show a lot more fun for us. It's the first half awards show. I don't think we've ever done something like this before, so it's got me excited about that. Post a bunch of questions to you guys with worthy candidates for each one, all the things you can think of, MVP, Cy Young, all that. We did our own responses that we're going to give first before telling you guys what you guys decided on. And it was tough, man, for a lot of these. Like a lot of the guys, unfortunately, didn't get their shine. A lot of the decisions were tough. And I think that's pretty cool, because if you told me in May that we had too many good things to choose one between, I wouldn't have believed you. It's a miracle we are where we are.
No, I agree. It was fun. I think this hopefully is like a recurring theme. Yeah. Because I think this is a perfect segue, during the All-Star break to kind of sum up the first half in a way. And then, we can talk about what we need moving forward.
Yeah. And it's a good excuse to talk about guys individually. So the first question, most obvious, who is the MVP in your opinion of the first half? This was a tight race. If you want, I can let you give yours first, or I can go first, whatever you want, Jerry.
Give us the options that you put up there.
I'm so glad you brought that up. The options were Francisco Lindor, Brandon Nimmo, Francisco Alvarez, Mark Vientos, JD Martinez, and Pete Alonso. Basically, the 6 core bats that have kept the Mets offensive machine moving and grooving. And all of these numbers, if you're into that kind of thing, are so pretty. All of them.
They really are. This was an easy choice for me.
Really?
I was. I wanted to give all of them they're all reasonable. I think Pete Alonso has had a subpar first half for himself.
Yeah.
He has an OPS of 121, by the way. He's doing fine, but I don't think he's up to his level. But outside of that, for me, the easy answer is Francisco Lindor. I mean, this guy has always ended up fine at the end of the year, very, very good. But for me, the biggest turning point for this season was the fact that he kicked it in gear earlier than he has in years past.
Yep, absolutely.
By the time he's slumped in the first half, and by the time he's been kicking it in lately, the team has already decided their fortune. He turned it on earlier this year, and I think him moving into the leadoff spot, shout out to Carlos Mendoza, him turning it on early, soon as he went into that leadoff spot, has completely reshaped this team. I think he is the biggest reason for this turnaround. 12 doubles. I'm sorry, not 12 doubles, 26 doubles, 17 homers, 18 stolen bases.
Yeah.
He has been phenomenal in that leadoff spot. He's been the best leadoff hitter in the game since he moved to there by a significant margin. He has been the catalyst, the engine starter, the driver, not to mention he's played, special defense. He's had a couple of hiccups that are kind of out of the norm for him, but him in the leadoff spot, starting it off for every game, it feels like, has been the key for me. So he is hands down the MVP of the first half for me.
Yeah, just to feed into that, second in baseball among shortstops for doubles with 26, third in home runs with 17. I mean, the list goes on and on. He's the 7th most valuable player in F4 amongst all players right now. He is having a terrific season. He's on pace to have maybe his best as a Met. He's on pace for 30-30 again, but like you said, the biggest difference is him kicking it into gear in May. And huge credit there does go to Carlos Mendoza for that lineup shift, but also guys like Mark Vientos stepping up, guys like Francisco Alvarez lengthening the lineup, enabling him to not have to bat third and be in those RBI situations all the time and rather be a table setter more so, and still get those situations from guys like Bader at the bottom of the lineup. And that's why you get the stat line that's so well-rounded on both sides of the ball, not to mention he's still 97th percentile in outs above average. You may look at the error total and think that's a little bit out of the norm, but trust me, he's still one of the best defenders in baseball and absolutely playing up to his paycheck. But that's not who I went with for my selection. Mine is the other guy who I think was the biggest thing to decide between Lindor and himself. That is Brandon Nimmo. I think we're seeing the coming of age of Brandon Nimmo. Again, a lineup shift that benefited this guy. Him moving to second, I think, changed a lot about his season. The biggest thing for me is that he's been an absolute monster with runners in scoring position. He has a 1.109 OPS with runners in scoring position on the year. Conversely, a 602 OPS with bases empty. And I think, amongst other things, Mets officials realized that and said, okay, let's not put him in the leadoff spot then. Let's put him in more run-scoring situations. We could see the first 100 RBI season of Brandon Nimmo's career this year. We could see the first 30 home run season. And this is a guy that plays special corner outfield defense. He's starting to steal bases more as well. I think that contract that the Mets signed him to 2 years ago is going to look like an absolute steal these next few years, because these kind of players are becoming very, very few and far between in the game right now. When you talk about like NL outfielders, it's kind of 3 guys on the Padres who have been absolutely terrific, Brandon Nimmo and Brian Reynolds, and that's kind of it amongst like the elite of the elite. Christian Yelich as well too. Nimmo is second in outfielder WAR amongst NL outfielders. He's got 8 stolen bases, 16 home runs. He's having a terrific year. Again, a guy that had kind of a slow start as well and then really kicked it into gear. And that just goes to show like how happy I am with the way the Mets have constructed their team right now. Because the two guys that we're singing the praises of as the guys that are pushing this team to new heights are the guys that are going to be here for the next 8 years, I think, 7 years, something like that. So Brandon Nimmo got my vote as MVP of the first half, though it was obviously a very tough decision. Do you have a guess as to who the people voted for, Jerry?
Well, I just want to add that Brandon Nimmo is leading the team in RBI.
That's crazy.
Like this guy at 63, I think his biggest total was 68.
Oh, you know what?
In his entire career, and he's got 63 already. He's been an absolute producer.
68,
Isn't that crazy?
68 last year, 63 right now in 60 less games.
Yep.
That's
and I
incredible.
think a lot of it, Daniel Murphy was in the booth after me, and then he joined us on the pre and post show the next day. And I love talking baseball with him. He is so smart from an offensive standpoint. He pointed out a few things and like put it into words that made sense to me. So I kind of want to pass him on.
Yeah.
Brandon Nimmo has evolved into a guy that not only is good at on base, he's got a 361 on base percentage, which is about his average now, maybe a little bit below what we've been seeing. But the way he's been attacking his advantage counts is why not only has his on base percentage gone down a little bit because it sacrifices getting on base through walks. When he's at 2-0, 3-1, and we saw him hit a home run on 3-0.
That was his first 3-0 swing of his entire career.
No, it was the first time he put the ball in play 3-0. I think he had swung like 6 times, but he's doing damage on those pitches. He decides like, I'm not just trying to make or trying to get on base here. When I'm at the advantage, I'm going to take my A swing. I'm going to look for a pitch in a certain area, and I'm going to drive the ball. And he's been doing that so well. So shout out to him. I think it's valid that you picked him, but I think it's Francisco Lindor for the fan vote.
And I think you are correct, Jerry. 49% of the vote did go to Francisco Lindor, 39% to Brandon Nimmo, and then all that other votes kind of just scattered amongst the 4 guys. But it's really cool to see, man. I mean, you could argue for pretty much any of these guys. You can bring up the Mets record when Francisco Alvarez plays in a game. You can talk about Mark Vientos seizing the opportunity and controlling that third base job with authority. You can talk about JD Martinez basically becoming the new hitting coach of the New York Mets, and all of those arguments would be valid. But at the end of the day, it does come down to these 2 guys who have been the highest paid guys on the team, the position players that you need to thrive in order to become a playoff team. They have done all of that and more and exceeded expectations in the first half.
Every one of them deserved votes. Again, Alvarez has only been in 44 games,
Right.
But his numbers when he's catching versus when anybody else is catching, the ERA, the win percentage, his impact both on the offensive side and defensive side can't be understated. I think he is a massive star in the making. So I'm excited to see what he's got going in the second half. But yeah, I think the fans got it right there.
Yeah, I mean, one more time for the catching ERA thing. We checked in on about this like when he came back initially, and the disparity was crazy. It still is. They have a 3.42 ERA when throwing to Alvarez. It's above 4.3 for every other catcher, even though Luis Torrens has been absolutely great behind the dish.
He's been great.
Just goes to show how much pitchers really love throwing to Alvarez. But yeah, comes down Lindor and Nimmo here. No surprise there. It makes me very happy to see these guys thriving. I wish they were both all-stars. Obviously, that opportunity is gone. Someone posted a crazy stat about like the most WAR ever for a player that doesn't have an award, and Brandon Nimmo was like 3rd or something. It's overdue. He's been in the league 9 years. He doesn't have a single thing in his award column. It's hard to believe at this point, but hopefully he'll get his due soon.
I agree. The guy deserved it more than a lot of those other players. I think Christian Walker. I think it's bananas that he didn't make it at first. No offense to Pete Alonso, but I think Christian Walker deserved it there, and I think Lindor deserved it as a shortstop, and Nimmo as an outfielder. Man, they both have been spectacular. So
Yeah. But, that's a whole nother
That's how it goes
Yeah,
sometimes.
it's just how it
That's
goes. All right, next up, who was your Cy Young of the first half? I think if we posed this question in June, it would have been a pretty easy runaway vote. But we just had a really good last month from Sean Manaea and Jose Quintana to kind of make this interesting. So those two were candidates alongside Luis Severino. And then I also put in, I think, the two most effective relievers out of the bullpen, Daniel Nunez and Jose Budo as well, because I think they deserved a little bit of love because they've been great amongst the the roller coaster that has been the 2024 Mets bullpen. For this one, I'll just come out and say it immediately. I did go with Luis Severino. He had some hiccups here and there, but in terms of innings thrown and gutting out after tough innings and starts and kind of just being the consistent beacon for the Mets this entire year and surpassing expectations, Severino's definitely earned it. He has not thrown less than 6 innings since May in a start, which really goes a long way considering how much innings the Mets bullpen has had to eat up in leverage situations. I mean, you talk about the Cubs start where he struck out 10 on Sunday Night Baseball, and just the story overall of him, not passing this inning mark of 109 2/3 since 2018. Like the improbability of this entire season for Luis Severino has been, it can't be spoken about enough. And I'm really hoping that he can keep it up in the second half and finish the year strong.
Yeah. Without further ado, I also voted for Severino. I think he's been so consistent for this pitching staff the entire year. I mean, he's made 18 starts so far, 109 2/3 innings. His consistency, his ability to go deep into the ball games on every time he grabs the ball has been a lifesaver.
Yeah.
He's been saving the bullpen every time out. He's been getting ground balls to kind of go deeper into the game, hasn't been chasing those strikeouts. He's been special in some outings, but he's just been that steady presence that they desperately needed. So yeah, for me, that was an easy vote too for Severino to be the Cy Young of the first half.
He's also become the designated OMG sign guy, which I kind of love for him. He was hard at work, I think, during the Colorado game. They hit like 6 home runs or something, but he's passionate about his job, and I respect that a lot. He seems like, we talked a lot about like, okay, well, like in May, the team was so bad, but Severino was pitching well. Do we trade him now? Do we extend him? What do we do? And I think back then we didn't realize how important he probably is to this clubhouse. These guys absolutely love Severino. You can see it in basically any dugout shot they pull up during SNY games. And it's really cool to see because that's how he was remembered in New York as well. Fans loved him, teammates loved him. And it's cool that even though he put on the crosstown uniform, he's still keeping up that energy.
Yeah, I still not convinced 100% that they're not going to trade him.
Really?
Because I still feel that way. He's their biggest chip to have.
There's no way.
I mean, there is a way because you have Kodai Senga coming back at some point. You have Peterson that's pitching really well. And I think he's got another gear. Manaea, Quintana have held up. You've got Christian Scott that's starting to come into his own a little bit, I think. I think Jose Budo's been a key member of that bullpen, and he'll stay there simply because they need it, but he deserves a spot in the rotation. Tyler McGill is still down there. I worry about their depth, so I think they might not trade him because of he's been their Cy Young, and they need that depth. But I can see a scenario where they move on from him.
It's not incredibly unlikely. I hope it doesn't, because you mentioned like Senga coming back, and I think this Mets rotation at full strength maybe doesn't have Christian Scott in it right now. We've seen some hiccups from him. But you mentioned Manaea and Quintana stepping up. I mean, Quintana's last 5 starts before his last outing against Colorado, he had an ERA below 1. Manaea's last 6 starts, he's got an ERA of 2. He's got the 12th best ERA in the National League among starters. Like, these guys have done their part in equal amount, if not more so than Severino, with maybe less consistency. But it would just be such a crazy move for the Vibes team, like you mentioned at the top of the episode.
I agree. I hope it doesn't happen, but I wouldn't be completely blindsided if they did trade him, just simply because they have it. So yeah.
Business is business at the end of the day. And he would be one of the best chips on the block. Oh wow, I can't believe we're talking about this.
I know. I'm just
Severino.
saying we're keeping our options open. So,
Yeah. It's going to be an eventful trade deadline, I think.
yep.
Luis Severino did win the popular vote amongst the people. 57% of the votes went to Severino, 22% to Sean Manaea, much deserved. And how about this, Jerry? 17% to Dedniel Nunez, which I kind of love because he doesn't have the sample size, sure, against starting pitchers, but he has been such a revelation out of the bullpen. He's really come into his own. He's stepped into a very difficult role in his rookie season of being a guy that's heavily relied upon. And I always go back to that 2-inning outing he had, I believe at the end of June, where he was, or it was the middle of June, where he was a candidate to get sent down because they needed a fresh arm. And he just was perfect that outing. He struck out 5 guys, and we're like, there's no way that the Mets can send this guy down.
I think he went like 2 2/3.
It was 2 1/3 innings against Miami, 5 strikeouts, no base runners allowed. And I think that outing solidified his spot in this pen going forward because I don't think there's any shot of him going back down to AAA. He's become such an important piece of this bullpen. Options are options at the end of the day, though. You're right.
Yeah. And then, this is it's hard to maintain that kind of dominance. But I do agree. I think the fact that, shout out to our listeners who voted. They're tuned in, man. Having this guy deserves some votes because he's been that, like, oh my gosh, we have nothing going on at the back end of the bullpen. We need somebody to step up. And this guy stepped up bigger than anybody.
Yeah.
Into kind of from an unknown at 28 years old to step in and be this guy. He's thrown 30 2/3 innings. He has 39 strikeouts and 5 walks. He fills the zone. He attacks hitters. It's so fun to watch this guy just come in and attack. And he deserves some votes. So shout out to our listeners that voted, man. That's
and
awesome.
How about this, Jerry? You mentioned the 5 walks there. Probably going to get a low whip. He's got a 0.815 whip on the year, which is so pretty. It's the 5th best mark in the National League for pitchers who have thrown at least 30 innings. The names that are up here, All-Star Matt Strahm, Raisel Iglesias, Brian Hudson of the Brewers, not familiar, but he's having a great year. The point is, Dedniel Nunez has been one of the best relievers in the National League, and this is a guy that might have not even been on the team if not for season-ending injuries to Brooks Raley, Drew Smith, Sean Reed Foley on the IL, Reed Garrett now on the IL, the Jorge Lopez situation. That's 5 guys right there that probably would have had major league spots before him, and you talk about seizing an opportunity. That's exactly what he's done.
Yep. Shout out to Stearns, the front office, and the coaching staff with Mendoza for not optioning him down. All signs pointed because they needed a fresh arm. He pitched his way to not get optioned down. It lets you know that there's a human element to this ball club. That was a huge sign, and he's been great.
And it's just natural, I think, for fans to see hard work and productivity get rewarded. There is a way to manipulate the system and make things easier for roster management. But at the end of the day, if you have a good player, keeping him on the big league roster, even though, advisory maybe say that you shouldn't, is always a really cool thing. So shout out him. All right. This one was tough. This next one. Who is the biggest surprise role player of the first half? Now, I didn't include Mark Vientos in this because in my opinion, he's beyond a role player now. He's becoming a legitimate cornerstone piece for this Mets team going forward. I instead chose all the guys that you might be thinking of outside of Vientos. Jose Iglesias was a candidate. Sean Reed Foley, Jose Budo. We just talked about Dedniel Nunez, and then Luis Torrens, acquired for $100 from the New York Yankees or something like that. 5 very deserving candidates. Jerry, who did you pick with this one?
Can you give me the phrasing of the question again?
Who was the biggest surprise role player of the first half?
Yep. I think this came down to 2 people for me.
Mm-hmm.
And the winner for me was Dedniel Nunez.
Yeah.
And for that reason, Jose Iglesias was a tough not vote for me because he's just been incredible and he's a key member of everything that's been going on in that clubhouse. OMG, all this stuff. So, but for me, Dedniel Nunez, for the same reason that he got a significant portion of the Cy Young, votes, this guy has been a key point, an integral part of almost every victory that the bullpen has been a part of. He's stepped in. He's been the long guy. He came in. He's been the 8th inning guy. He got a save, his first save of his career. The guy's been otherworldly. He's got an ERA plus of 167, saying he's 2/3 above, league average. That's amazing. He's been spectacular. I think for me, he's been the biggest surprise and in the most needed area. I think that's what separated him from Jose Iglesias is they desperately needed. Without him, this team is not where they are right now in the win-loss column. He has been such a force in that bullpen, so he got my vote. And
I love your rationale there, though, because it does come down to like necessity of the role player. Like where do we need this help? The Mets are 16-5 when he pitches. Like he's used almost exclusively now in high leverage situations where they need a scoreless frame to win the game, and he's come up big time. And it's interesting to think about where the team would be without him. Like who would be pitching these 8th innings? Like I'm not totally sure what the answer is there. So I definitely heavily considered him. But at one point this season, Jerry, base runners against the New York Mets were 39 for 40 attempting a stolen base. That is historically inept. Like in addition to all the bad baseball that we were watching in May, it felt like every walk, every hit by pitch, every single, every error that led to a first base runner turned into a double by default, essentially. And the fact that the Mets acquired who I think might be the best backup catcher in baseball right now for cash considerations on a whim is absolutely incredible to me. I voted for Luis Torrens because I think that he was so necessary to the team at the time when they acquired him. They hadn't gotten Alvarez back yet. Tomas Nido had stepped up in a big way to help the defense, did his own clutch hitting. But Torrens, I think, just did a lap on him comparatively in both those facets. And we love Nido, and it was tough to watch him go. But it was the right decision because the way that the Mets catching core has developed with Torrens and then the return of Alvarez, I think has not only helped the pitching staff, it's helped the base running game, and he's also hit a little bit too. He's got a 150 OPS plus. He's caught 8 of 11 runners running on him. He's slugging over 500, and he's doing way more than I think the Mets initially asked of him when they brought him in and acquired him. And he's running with the opportunity. This entire team has been guys seizing opportunities outside of the core that we talked so much about at the beginning of the season. And Torrens, I think, is a really good example of that. Right now, he has been worth 1 WAR on the season. His career WAR is 0.6, and he's been in the league for 7 years. He's playing the best baseball of his career at age 28, and I think he's been the biggest surprise role player for us.
I love that. I love that answer. He deserves it. He's only played in 18 games. He's got a 1 WAR.
That's insane. That's insane efficiency. It's unbelievable.
Also, he's going to play a significant role moving forward because they're going to continue to give Alvarez rest.
Oh, yeah.
They're going to continue to allow him to take, 1 out of 3, 1 out of 4 games. So he's defensively and offensively been able to help. I understand your voting. I think he's going to play a huge role moving forward. I like that we have different choices for most of these. Because everybody needs mentioning, and Torrens has been, how much do the Yankees wish they had him right now?
Trevino is going to be gone for 6 weeks, I think, with a grade 2 quad strain. That's a guy that they could desperately use right now, and instead he's playing for the Mets.
Yep, yeah, and Trevino has a platinum glove, and he can't throw out a runner to save his life right now.
Yeah.
And Torrens has been doing it at 8 out of 11.
8 out of 11 is ridiculous. Even with the things that have developed with the team in the past month or so, that is a ridiculous line considering the big advances.
Shout out to the pitching staff too. They've made adjustments. They've been quicker to the plate. They've been throwing over more. They've been varying their times and holds. It was something that they addressed and they did it mid-season. Very impressive. But Torrens throwing it behind the plate, giving Alvarez some rest. I like that.
He's got the second highest slugging percentage amongst NL catchers with at least 50 plate appearances and the second highest OPS plus, only behind William Contreras, But Jerry, 15% of people voted with me, 13% of people voted with you, 69% of people voted for Jose Iglesias. I can't say that I'm shocked. I think our arguments came down to mostly like necessity-based things, that being throwing out runners and pitching late in games. But you can't argue that Jose Iglesias is having an absolute miracle dream season this deep into his career. He's got a 999 OPS. He's been arguably the best hitting second baseman in baseball in the time that he's played. I'm hoping he can keep it up because he's been such a fun story. And, you know, also that whole music career thing that's kind of become larger than life. So he gets...
Yeah, man. I think the fans got it right here too. You know, I think with how poorly Jeff McNeil has done at the plate, they desperately needed somebody to step up, and he's taken over. I think McNeil has been the bench piece. I think they switched. Shout out to Iglesias, man, because I thought his career as a regular, even a guy that stays on a roster, was over. He's been a glove first guy. We've seen some of the flash and how good he is with his hands on defense. But offensively, he has been a force, and it looks sustainable to me. He's not going to hit 380 for the season like he is right now. I don't think he's going to slug 582. It's possible. He's only played in 30 games, but he's been an absolute spark plug. He is the centerpiece around this team chemistry, I think. Since he came in, the OMG has taken over. He's been spectacular. I think the fans got it right. Again, I'm partial to Nunez in the bullpen. I think his role as a late inning reliever, I think, provided more punch, and he's done it for longer. But again, I think the fan vote got it right with Iglesias here.
And the coolest thing about Iglesias is that not only does he still flash the leather better than, you know, most second basemen in the game, he kind of profiles the same way McNeil did when he was hitting right. He's one of the toughest strikeouts in baseball right now. In terms of lowest strikeout percentage, it's Luis Arias at 5.8%, which no one's touching that. And then it's Jose Iglesias and Jung-Hoo Lee at 8.2%. Like, he's been a contact king. I'm sure he's not going to hit 380 the entire year, but he's such a fun at-bat to watch every time. And not to mention, first multi-homer game of his career at age 34, 12 years in the league. This is a guy that played 118 games 2 years ago and was out of the league last year, stuck on minor league deals. So not only is the story great, is the music great, but the on-field production has well warranted him starting every day. We'll see if that becomes more of a thing in the second half. I still don't think it will, but either way, when he gets playing time, he's thriving.
Yeah, I think he will. I really do think he's stepped in front of McNeil, especially since, you know, against lefties. But we'll see, man. This is the biggest surprise for me, apart from his offensive production. He's in the 80th percentile of sprint speed at 34 years old,
Really?
at 5'11". He's 80th percentile. His sprint speed is 28.4. Like,
I didn't know that. Oh my God.
he lost I watched it, man. He can leg out a single. He can break up a double play. He's lost some quickness as far as his range. His OAA range is -1. His arm strength has lost some. He's in the 5th percentile of arm strength. Again, second base, he's played some third, but second base, you don't need to throw the ball that hard. But he's still got some quickness. He's still got some bat speed. I've been impressed.
Let's steal some more bases then. If we're 80th percentile, I didn't realize.
Yeah, but you know, that's sprint speed. That's not like takeoff speed.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. And also he's slugging 582, so maybe just keep doing that instead.
So he's just sprinting to second base.
Well, it was nice to talk about all the fun stories and role players. Also, shout out Sean Reed Foley, Jose Budo. They racked up a couple votes as well. They've been very important as well.
Absolutely.
I think we'd talk about Reed Foley a lot more had he not gotten hurt these past 2 weeks. Because
the dude was dominating.
He was insane.
He was Daniel Nunez before, you know, Nunez was, because he had been a kind of a more established reliever. He's been in the organization for a few years now. Yeah. We'll see him come back hopefully soon. He was great too, so I'm glad that you put him on there.
Yeah, similar story to Severino, most innings since 2018. So hopefully he can keep that up and stay healthy. But now we do need to talk about the bad, because we're a positive show, but you can't ignore the flaws of the team. There's a reason they had a tough May and are, you know, not leading the division and all that. I also posed to the fans, who was the biggest disappointment of the first half. The candidates were Jeff McNeil, Edwin Diaz, Adam Ottavino, Tyler McGill, and Brett Beatty. We don't like punching down on this show or, speaking things that everyone's already aware of. But I thought it was important because, this Mets team has done a lot of things terrifically, but there are still storylines here of players struggling, and who knows when the end is in sight. So I'm curious to see where your vote landed here.
My vote was easy. It's Jeff McNeil, man. This is a guy that they signed to that I think it was a 4-year contract.
Yeah.
He's been a bat to ball, guru, a guy that's been learning to get on base, he's hitting 216.
Yeah.
And it's been less than, like, he's not bad luck. Like, it's not due to anything. He's popped up to the infield, rolled over. He's struck out 40 times already.
Yeah.
And if you're going to be a contact guy and you're not putting the ball in play with any authority, I don't know where you fit in. He's still an incredible defender at second base and the outfield. He's moved around since Iglesias has stepped up. They found ways to get him defensively out there and sub guys late in the game. But he's been the biggest disappointment for me because he had a down year last year. He turned it on in September. But if you're not going to hit for any power, you have to hit the ball consistently. And he hasn't done that, man. I thought he was due for a bounce back. I didn't want them to trade him a couple of years ago because I think he's so valuable. But now I think his most value is off the bench. I think the fact that they can sub him in late in the game for defense, or they can bring him in a spot where they need to put the ball in play, like with bases loaded, a big at bat against a righty. I think he's swung his way out of the everyday lineup for me personally. So that he's been my biggest disappointment of the first half.
Yeah, I mean, we're pretty unified here, along with the audience. I won't build up the suspense. 65% of people voted for Jeff McNeil. It's no secret why. Strikeouts are up. His range is down. His sprint speed is down. His OBP is below 300. His slugging is barely above 300. It's just been a nightmare season, the worst of his career. And he was a guy that was on and off, basically. 2020, he had a great year. 2021, not so much. 2022, he wins the batting title, and then a down year last year. So my brain was like, all right, well, he'll bounce back again this year. And things are just worse than they've ever been. I think the sting of it does get alleviated a little bit by Jose Iglesias stepping up and being as terrific as he is and surpassing expectations in the opposite way. But yeah, this is a guy you rewarded with an extension. It's a guy that you made part of your core going forward for the next few years. And I think the Mets can't trade him now. I think this is a contract that's really tough to wrangle yourself out of without giving up more than you want to. And this is a team that's trying to build up their farm system and is not in the position to be dealing away prospects to get rid of the money. I think this is just something that they're going to have to eat, which is partially why I think they'll keep playing him just to see if he can turn a corner. But it's been really tough to watch. He had a couple bright spots over the past 2 weeks. He's been hitting a little bit better in July, but he's still a long ways away from even getting back to league average. So you can only imagine where this team would be if you also had batting champ Jeff McNeil at his form at the bottom of the lineup alongside Harrison Bader. You can make this lineup even more scary, but it helps that they have 6 guys that have been having career best seasons in the lineup. So yeah, Jeff McNeil got my vote. Votes were spread out pretty evenly amongst Brett Beatty, Adam Ottavino. I thought about Edwin Diaz. His numbers have improved. He's been locking up some clutch saves, but that suspension really hurt this team. It could have hurt the team a lot worse. I think they went 5-5 while he was gone. But they need Edwin Diaz to be Edwin Diaz in the second half for sure.
Yep. He needs to step up for sure. He needs to lock it in, be out there every day. No more suspensions. Can't mess around because the bullpen's been the anchor to this team, as in a bad is
Achilles
keeping
heel.
them holding. There it is, the Achilles heel. But with him solidified in that 9th inning role, they can figure out the 8th and the 7th with some of the guys that they can roll out that are hot. But yeah, I mean, his suspension and then the ups and downs that he had, they need him in the second half. This is when they need him to step up and be who they signed to that record deal. But yeah, I think McNeil is the easy choice here for biggest disappointment.
Jerry, before we go on, I got a fun question for you because I was just looking at the numbers. How
Okay.
many different Mets pitchers do you think have recorded a save this year?
Ooh,
Diaz has 10. He leads the team.
okay.
But how many different guys have a save?
6 other guys.
9 guys. total.
9.
That just
That's
goes to show
incredible.
they've had to fill the void of Edwin Diaz many, many times this year. Reed Garrett has 4, Diekman has 3, multiple guys with 2. It's been crazy that the Mets have survived this long, but I think in the second half, you can't keep living like this. You'll get Reed Foley back, you'll get Garrett back, but you need Edwin Diaz to be the guy he's been the past few weeks. So hopefully
Agreed.
that keeps.
Yep.
This next one was our biggest split amongst votes. Like a lot of candidates here got double-digit percentage of the votes. So I'm really curious to see where you landed. What was the biggest moment of the first half? The Mets had a lot of walk-offs, a lot of huge hits and plays. The candidates were Mark Vientos' walk-off home run against the Cardinals, I think 2 days before he got sent back down. Francisco Lindor's recent go-ahead single against Aroldis Chapman. You had Alvarez's game-tying double against David Robertson after a great at-bat. You had Luis Torrens's game-ending double play in London. Brandon Nimmo's walk-off home run against the Braves, and JD Martinez's walk-off home run against the Marlins. Jerry, a lot of good choices here. What'd you end up with?
All right, I'll go first. My biggest moment is probably not the one that's going to win, but for me, it was Luis Torrens double play to end the game in London. They lost the first game. They looked like they were blowing the second game, and Torrens made that great double play, touched the bag or touched home plate, then threw him out at first. It was like a surprise. It was like a defensive walk-off. It was really cool. And it was in a moment where this team was still kind of figuring out what direction they were going. What was the date? June 7th?
The date was June 9th.
June 9th. So this is right in the beginning of their ascent. I think May 30th was the day that we have marked as they had that team meeting. Yep. They figured it out. This was the early parts of this. This was when the team started to figure out how to win games instead of how to lose games. That would have been an easy way to lose a game. He figured out a way to win a game. They've been doing it all along, but that was the biggest play for me in the first half.
Yeah, I mean, at that moment in time, they had the team meeting. They split the series against the Diamondbacks. Again, that's a series you probably could have won if not for the final game. And then Torrens comes on the team. They sweep the Nationals. They kind of lose the first Philly game in embarrassing fashion. And then you have this close game against a really good team that you could win, a win that you desperately need. You're 9 games under 500 at this point. So to make that play in that moment, after we saw so much bad defense throughout the season to that point, it makes sense why you went with that. And I think you'll be surprised at how many people voted for it. My pick came 3 days later. It was the 9th inning. We were down 2-1 against a Marlins team that had already taken 2 or 3 from us last month. We were on the verge of losing a series after finally building up momentum. And who stepped up as the winning run at the plate after a clutch stolen base? JD Martinez against Tanner Scott. Scott hadn't allowed a run in his past 22 innings, but it didn't matter. Right center field power. JD Martinez's walk-off home run against the Marlins was my pick. It continued what would become a 7-game win streak. The legend of Grimace grew from that. But also it was him picking up a lineup that wasn't firing on all cylinders the way we know it is now, 6 weeks later. And Martinez went on to have a great series against the Padres, a series that we swept, and then everybody else began to seize opportunities after that. But I think that was really, when I think of this season, hopefully at the end of it, they're a winning team, they're in the playoffs, whatever. These 2 plays, the ones that we picked, I think are the moments that start the season for us, because it's 2 games you could easily lose. The 2 games that the Mets easily lose in May, I think is what we said when we did the show. And instead they turned them into wins and they kept it going from there. And it's just really cool to think about them coming together off the backs of, two highlight reel moments in the ninth inning.
I love your pick. That's the other one that I almost picked because it was a moment for JD Martinez, the guy that you signed to be this kind of impact RBI guy. I love that you mentioned Lindor's stolen base in front of that because that was a huge moment for him to get on base and then to get into scoring position to tie the game. It was huge. It was a huge stolen base because JD Martinez is a double guy at the moment. And so if he hits that ball into the gap and it doesn't sail over and they walk it off, which is the first walk-off of his career, which was amazing, walk-off homer.
Yeah, it's crazy.
But that would have been an RBI double because he got into scoring position. He might have scored from first, but the fact that he took advantage of that and put himself out there. We haven't had those moments at base running a lot in the last couple of years. But yeah, I can see because he's been such a huge story of this entire Mets team. For him to have that moment at that time really solidified who he is in that run producing role. I love that moment.
And you know what's beautiful about it, Jerry? It's our only tie on the survey sheet. 31.3%, 76 votes went to both of these moments, making it a tie for first place. I think that's perfect because I think they're both equally important. They're so different, but same in terms of impact on the team. And they came within 5 days of each other, which is really cool. Not far behind was Alvarez's game-tying double against the Rangers, which I really wanted to vote for because I think it's the best at-bat of the season for the Mets. Like him laying off those sliders against a pitcher who had just struck out the Dodgers' big three 2 nights in a row was so impactful to continue the winning streak. And then not far behind that was Brandon Nimmo's walk-off home run against the Braves in the middle of the bad times in May.
Yeah. There was another moment against Aroldis Chapman where they kind of went after him. The bottom of the lineup had some huge at-bats. Jose Iglesias worked an incredible walk against his fellow Cuban. That was a huge walk, but yeah, I like the moments that we chose, and we had a tie. We were both right. How about that?
Yeah, it's pretty neat. We got one more. We got one more here. It's our biggest 2-horse race of this entire sheet. I love that we had 5 candidates to put for this question because it speaks to the insanity that has been this year. What was the best rallying cry of the first half? It's not the typical Mets mascots you think of when you think of Mr. and Mrs. Met. The candidates were Seymour Wiener. Fans wanted me to include it, so I put it on there. It was the first game of the season, but it still counts. The Rally Pimp, Glizzy Iggy, which I missed, by the way. I'm not.
That was the dog eating the hot dog.
Yeah, and apparently she's been to every game since, which is pretty cool.
It was a cute moment.
So she's next up, I guess. And then the 2 big ones, which are Grimace and OMG/Candelita, which is Jose Iglesias. 5 different rallying cries, 5 different mascots, all of them of equal importance. It's really cool. I'll come out and say it. I went with OMG because I like the song. I love the sign. I think the post-game concert could have been catastrophic, like we said a couple weeks ago, and instead it has continued to uplift the team. He's at the All-Star game performing it. I think it is one of the coolest baseball stories I have seen in this decade, and it coming from a 34-year-old middle infielder who was basically out of the game prior to this year. Is so sensational. So my vote went to OMG.
Yeah, I love it. It was hard for me. OMG will be sustaining. This will live on. That will be the home run song. It'll be a walkout song. They'll still have the OMG sign. So that one's going to live on for the rest of the season. It's the biggest one in the clubhouse. And that to me matters as a former player to understand that. But my vote was for Grimace. Grimace preceded that. Grimace was right when they started to get hot. It was the reason they were is it the Grimace era? The fact that we have Grimace t-shirts. We have one in the studio, a little mini Grimace that sits on a shelf next to helmets. Fans dressing up. That kid in DC that was going bananas
awesome.
in that was unreal. To me, Grimace is more from the fan side of things.
Yes.
It was the first sign of what is this team? Are they special? why is Grimace a thing? I guess it was his birthday. You can get.
Yeah, I actually don't know the reason why he threw out the first pitch.
Yeah, it was his celebrating his birthday. That I don't even. Yeah, I don't know either, and there's no real explanation for it. But the fact that like McDonald's was like tweeting at me consistently, it was such a weird moment and a very Mets centric moment.
Yes.
It was so fun for the fans. That for me is why I voted for Grimace, because it was the first piece. It was the beginning of when they started to come together.
Yes.
It was like that moment of why are they playing well? Because we didn't see it. Like, what's happening? Is it because of Grimace? And then it's not because of Grimace. It's because this team is good. But that was like maybe the mojo that the fans needed to jump behind and cheer for something that's a little bit different than what they're seeing on the field. It kind of helped them be excited for this team. And it was a huge moment for me. I'll never forget it. Again, OMG is going to live on. Grimace will be in the background, but it was the moment for me, the spark plug for this whole thing from a fan perspective.
That reasoning is pretty perfect because OMG was kind of player controlled and Grimace was completely fan controlled. Because whenever the players got asked about it, they were like, "Yeah, like it's cool. Like I think we're playing really well, and like it's cool that the fans have a thing." There is no other fan base, maybe in sports, that would champion a McDonald's mascot and turn it into like the winning juju of the team. It helped that they won 7 games in a row when it happened. It was just such a fun week after, like late in May, man. I wasn't watching every inning of every game, and that's like what I do. I love Mets baseball, even when they're bad, and they've been bad a lot over the past 14 years. I watch, and in May, it got really tough. They were just losing winnable games every night, and that was the moment where I fully got back in, and I haven't really missed a frame besides my time in Italy since. And any moment that came of it, you had thousands of people tweeting that Grimace was the reason, and I think that's so cool. Fans agreed with you. 61% of votes went to Grimace, 33% went to OMG/Candelita, and then how about Glizzy Iggy coming in with 10 votes to finish in third?
Love that. A little recency bias there.
Bias, I think for sure, because I think
but again, I think it's such a fun thing. So silly. We're playing. It's a game that we're watching. A silly game, and this what a fun thing to be a part of. So.
Shout out Grimace. Shout out the 2024 New York Mets. What a unforgettable first half of baseball. It's hard to believe that we still got like 3 months to go before we figure out the fate of this team. So much fun stuff coming up. Trade deadline, All-Star Week, all that stuff. Solid award show. Congrats to our winners.
Yep, everybody got a piece. I think the fans nailed it on all the votes. I enjoyed all of it. I want to do this again every year.
Yeah, we should.
We'll do a postseason version. It'll be great.
I love it, Jerry. I think that's probably all we got, unless you got anything else.
You want to see, like, we got the trade deadline coming up. Do you want to talk at all about like our needs? Because like I think we need another piece in the bullpen. I think we need one more at least.
Yeah. And I think that, we've said a lot. It's the easiest thing to trade for. I'm really curious because the Mets were the first team to basically make a move. I think the Royals traded for Hunter Harvey, actually. So
I mean, yeah, they did that, but also a rise to the Padres.
Oh my God, I forgot about that. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like they jumped on it. Yeah, they jumped on it.
I was going to say, I'm sad to see Hunter Harvey go. We hit him really well. And now he's
we were the only team, I think.
But yeah, I think if the Mets are going to make another move, which in all likelihood, why wouldn't they? It might happen soon. Like it's pretty crazy to think about. With Phil Maton coming in, I loved that move a lot. He's got a good career resume up until this point. Seems like a guy the Mets could tap into. But in terms of relief arms that could go, you could look at all the bottom feeder teams and pick out 1 or 2 guys that could easily be important guys in this Mets bullpen. So I'd expect it sooner rather than later.
Yep, I think that's their only glaring need is they need another.
They don't need
one more solid. Yeah, they have their bench, So I'm excited for this team to move forward. We got the All-Star game tonight, and then they have 2 days off.
Yeah, and then Kodai Senga's return on the horizon, which I'm really excited about.
Yeah, man,
it's been a while since we've seen him. Guys, thank you for listening. If you listened and enjoyed the show, leave a like if you're watching on YouTube. Maybe subscribe, leave us a review. Those things help us out a big way, especially if you're a long-time listener. We're the kind of...
Yeah, come on, do even if you're just an online listener, like a podcaster, if you go on our YouTube, it really helps, us move forward and be able to put this show together.
We love you. We'll see you next week.
Thank you.
Listen to the sweet outro music. Let's go, Mets.
Let's go, Mets.
Station.